So does Destiny 2 Lightfall live up to all the hype? We're going to be talking about that here in this video. It's going to be my review specifically for the Destiny 2 Lightfall campaign. Okay, we're not talking about the whole experience. We're not talking about all the exotics. We're not reviewing the entirety necessarily. We're reviewing specifically the campaign, the story experience, right? Because some people, that's all they played for. And also, that's kind of the big thing each year, is the big chunk of story with the lore, and of course we have a bunch of new additions and stuff like that as well. Now, if I was reviewing this as a whole, I would say it is an extremely good expansion. Why? Because we have stuff like loadouts that have finally come to the game. Guardian ranks are interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about them quite yet. Unfortunately, we do not yet have the built-in LFG that got pushed off and delayed, so we're not getting that just quite yet. But overall, the experience is good. The changes with the mod system is really nice. You don't actually have to go in and equip any of the certain mods like Unstoppable or Overload, excuse me, or Barrier, things like that on your actual gear. If you unlock it on your artifact, it automatically applies, which is really, really nice. So again, there's a lot of great quality of life improvements to this expansion, and I think as a whole, Destiny 2 is in a better position, a much better position than it ever was, especially like I said, with the loadouts. You have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 loadouts total. You start off with just a couple, depending where your rank is in Guardian ranks. If you're rank 6, which most people will be if they've played in the past a decent amount, then you'll have 6 slots unlocked, but then you have to progress your Guardian ranks to unlock the additional 4 slots as well. So again, there's some nice additions, commendations, different things like that. A lot of massive quality of life improvements. We have Strand, which is a new subclass, new darkness subclass that is really fun to use, and it's just incredible. Now, that's the expansion as a whole. So I would say that, as an expansion as a whole, if you want, a quick kind of review on that, I would say it's probably a solid 9. Probably, maybe an 8.5. I haven't really thought that one through too much because I'm thinking more in terms of the campaign, but as a whole experience, I think it's between 8.5 and 9. But specifically to the campaign, that's what we're going to be focusing on here in this video. I do also want to note that I'm trying a different style. Usually I do kind of like a green screen, and I'm like on, like a quarter of the screen overlaid, but this time I'm just throwing myself up as a corner cam at the top right corner with random gameplay playing in the background. Again, spoiler-free stuff. I'm not going to be spoiling you guys in this. It's completely spoiler-free. And all that good stuff. So let me know if you like this format, or if you prefer the green screen format for reviews. Anyways, let's get into the campaign stuff. So there's 8 missions, which is about typical, 7 or 8 missions, right? And you throw in the fact that they force you to do a strike, the brand new strike in the middle of that. In terms of the strike itself, I think it's a great strike. I really enjoyed it. There's some really cool vibes, both musically and environmentally. The enemies and just the mechanics, and it's pretty solid fun. I think it's a good strike, really solid strike. But in terms of the campaign story, it starts off with like this massive cutscene. And again, I'm not going to spoil anything for you guys, but obviously, if you've seen any pre-launch stuff, that there's a whole thing with the Witness, right? The Witness has recruited Callus and made him this new entity, made him a disciple of the Witness. And so Callus is doing the bidding of the Witness to try to gain access to this thing called the Veil, which is on this brand new location, which, by the way, the location is a lot of fun as well. It's a great location. I really enjoy it. It's on Neptune, and the place is called Neomuna. And this introduces a brand new, kind of people, I guess they are, called the Cloudstriders, and they're really cool. They kind of remind me of Silver Surfer. I'm sure they took inspiration from that from Marvel. A lot of cool stuff there, and I love their whole vibe and their whole kind of aesthetic. And they're massive, by the way. They're super tall when you see them next to normal people. But anyways, all that to say, the new location is great. And the Cloudstriders are very interesting and intriguing, and the whole thing going on with Neptune. We got this new planet, and again, technically speaking, that's just part of the overall campaign, but that is where kind of most of the campaign sorry, overall expansion, but that's where most of the campaign takes place. And I played the whole thing on Legendary, by the way, and the rewards were phenomenal. It's great stuff. I mean, you know, if you can do it on Legendary, you're gonna get great rewards. Now, it starts off really strong. The opening cutscene is just like, it feels very almost like the beginning of Avengers Infinity War, where it's like, okay, there's a threat coming, we got to do something. But as you progress and as you start getting through the missions, you start realizing that this story seems to be more about Strand and trying to figure out Strand and how to, you know, kind of how to wield it, than the Witness and Callus and Neptune. And I mean, those elements are there, but those almost feel like kind of side stories where Strand is taking the spotlight. It's fine that, you know, obviously we got a brand new subclass, and, you know, we have to have a way where, you know, that's kind of introduced, and you know, there's a story arc with that, but that felt like it was the main plot, the main story, right? And again, the whole thing is, you know, you got to wield Strand to kind of try to get an upper advantage on the enemy, and you know, win the fight, win the war, or try to win the war, try to give you an edge in the war. But even then, like I said, it felt like so much heavy emphasis on Strand, where I felt like a lot of the stuff surrounding it, which I was really excited for going into this, like the Witness and Callus and Neptune and all that. Again, we've seen a lot of it, but I felt like that kind of took a little bit of a backseat, and that was disappointing for me. In terms of the gameplay and the mechanics, we got brand new enemies like the Tormentors, which are pretty insane and pretty daunting and pretty freaky and terrifying when you're, especially when you're on Legendary. A lot of the fights, there's a lot of boss fights, a lot of different, you know, kind of arena type battles and sections that were a lot of fun. And I think overall that the gameplay side of things, I think it was really solid. I don't know whether I preferred Witch Queen or this in terms of gameplay specifically, you know, gameplay, like all the fights and the environments, different things like that. Maybe environmentally I preferred Witch Queen, but that's probably just a little bit of a bias personally. But that said, you know, the environments on Neptune are just phenomenal, and there's, you know, of course, Callus's ship that you know, you're going to see parts of to some extent. I'm not going to spoil too much there. And anyways, overall, it's pretty solid mechanically and gameplay wise. I think it was a lot of fun. I think it was really solid. You know, Legendary is definitely a challenge, so if you want a challenge, it's going to challenge you, but you're going to get amazing rewards for it. You know, tried some of the new weapons, but again, that's more expansion stuff, not specific to the campaign. So in terms of the campaign and the story, like I said, Strand, a lot of fun. It is a little complex to get your hands around, you know, compared to the other subclasses at first, but again, it seems to be the main kind of thing of the story. And then finally, when you get to the very end of the game, after the final boss fight, there's this one last epic cutscene. And I kind of wish there was more epic moments like that throughout. There were some cutscenes, you know, especially in the, like, second mission, maybe third mission, possibly, where there was some moments where you've seen a little bit more of the Witness, and the Witness, you know, having some dialogue. Again, I'm not going to say what exactly is going on there. And those were intriguing moments. And those are moments that I wish we just had a little bit more of. I wish there was a little bit more focus on that, and that Strand would have been secondary, but it felt Strand was primary, and the Witness and Callus and everything else going on with Neptune was the secondary thing. To me, anyways. Like I said, all these things are subjective. You may completely disagree with me. That's completely fine. All that to say, the campaign was a really fun experience. I think the story was solid, but I expected a lot more from it, especially being the second to last expansion, you know, story before we go into the very end, right? Until we go into the next saga, before the darkness and light saga, you know, comes to an end, and we go into whatever comes next, right? So the way I was looking at it is that this DLC, this expansion, this story campaign was supposed to be sort of like a Avengers Infinity War. And again, I do believe they took inspiration from that, because you do get vibes of that, especially how it starts and how it ends. How it ends definitely feels like an Avengers Infinity War style, you know, feeling, how they kind of, you know, did that from, you know, at the beginning and at the end of the campaign. But all the stuff in the middle felt like it was lacking. And that's where I felt like I was a little like, okay, it felt a little underwhelming. Beginning, strong start. Ending, pretty solid start. I mean, a little bit anticlimactic to an extent. It could have been a little bit more epic, and I feel like it was a tiny bit anticlimactic. but it sets up the next expansion, the Final Shape, nicely. It almost feels like the Final Shape and Lightfall were supposed to be one giant expansion, and they kind of decided, hey, let's just make this into like 2 parts, right? Where, again, kind of like Avengers, it was supposed to be like one Avengers movie, and they're like, we're just going to be Avengers, you know, Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2, which ended up being Endgame. Anyway, so there's a lot. Every expansion ends with a lot of questions, right? Every single one. Witch Queen did it, you know, and that's how they string you into the next expansion, and that's fine. But I feel like there was, I guess, less things answered in this expansion, in this story, than there were in like Witch Queen and previous ones. Now, again, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm just, you know, not recalling correctly, but I feel like, you know, they left a lot more kind of questions and more things unanswered. I was hoping for, I guess, a bit more answers, a bit more depth, and I know it's going to be something that unfolds through, you know, Season of Defiance, which is this season, and the next season, where is a Season of the Deep, I believe it's called, and then the other 2 seasons, as we progress through this year, they're going to kind of, you know, string us through the story a little bit more, but for the main bulk, the main kind of chunk of the yearly expansion, I expected a little bit more from it. All that to say, I did really enjoy the story overall. I think it was solid. I think it was a good experience. You know, the gameplay wise, I think, you know, the overall structure of the campaign was solid. I just wish that Strand was not the primary focus, that it was secondary and everything else was primary. But again, it's a really good experience, and it's a really good story for what is there. So I'm kind of struggling to kind of rate this, but I think I'm going to give it like a 7.8 out of 10. And again, we're talking about the campaign specifically, right? I think it could have been a lot better. I think it could have been an 8.5, but it's just not quite there for me. It's just, if it left a lot of, it left a lot to be desired, I guess you could say, which kind of disappointed me on that front. So I don't know. Take it as you will. Let me know in the comments below. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Would you give it a lower score? Would you give it the same score? Would you give it a higher score? What would be your score from your experience? Again, solid expansion, and besides the campaign, like I said, the expansion itself is a very good expansion. Okay, there's a lot going on for, like I said, if we were doing like a review specifically on the expansion, which I'm not quite ready to do that if we were to do that, because there's a lot more content for me to dive into. But as of right now, there's so much content, there's so much quality of life improvements. I think the expansion is probably like a solid 8.5 to 9 easily, because there's a lot of great stuff that you know, came with this expansion. But we're talking specifically campaign, like 7.8. Again, let me know your thoughts. Stick around for more and do a variety of gaming content here on the channel. We always come back to Destiny, and I look forward to bringing you guys a whole lot more Destiny content, especially as we go through the seasons leading up to the very grand finale, the Final Shape, which I hope is a little bit more epic. And I mean, it's got to be. It's the end of the saga. Well, you know, they got to do a little bit more epic. But the cutscenes were great. You know, I did enjoy a lot the story that was there in this campaign. So play it for yourselves. It's definitely a must play. Play it for yourselves, and let me know your thoughts. I'll see you guys soon in another one. Tell them friends. Game on. Catch you later.